friends, it's Christy, and I'm so excited to be back with you on the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the adorable new Halloween Who stamp set, and I'll also be using some pattern paper from the Creepy Confections 6x6 that was just released. So I'm actually going to pull out one of the patterns so that I can color all of my images to match. So I'm just going to tuck that underneath my Nina Solar White cardstock, and I'm going to begin coloring with my Copic markers. So I thought I would do this first little owl in some warm grays for something different. So I'm using W00, W1, W3, and W5. I'll just be using the darkest 3 shades on his body, and then I'll use the lighter 2 shades on his face. So I laid in some shadows with that W5 first, and then I'm blending that out with the W3. I did forget to add a little shadow on his right wing with that W5, so I went back and added that in. And then my lightest shade for his head and wings is going to be that W1. Then when I switch to his face, the darkest shade is going to be that W1, and I'm going to blend that out with the W00 and just let that fade into the white. I colored the clouds off screen with the W00 and W1 just to save some time in the video, and then I'm also doing the little ghost costume that the second owl is wearing with those same shades. I just added a little bit of light shadowing and then blended that out with the lightest shade, and again I'm going to let that fade into the white. For my branch, I'm using E43, E44, and E47, and I'm going to lay in some shadow with that E47 just by using the very tip of my marker so that I can get into that tiny little area there. And then I'm going to blend that out with the E44, saving almost half of that branch for that lightest shade, the E43, so I have a nice highlight. Since we have that moon there, it's going to be casting a nice glow on the top of that branch. And then I'm also going to use these shades to color in the second owl's face. So I use the E47 once again as my darkest, blend it out with the E44. I'm going to blend that out even further with the E43, and I wanted that even softer, so I ended up pulling in the E42 to finish off the top. I always like to keep the area around the eyes nice and light so you can really see the critter's personality showing through. For their beaks and the little witchy owl's feet, I used YR04, YR07, and YR09. Just pulling in that nice bright orange from that pattern paper. And then I'm going to start coloring in the stripes on the witchy owl's costume. So I'm following the stripes on the pattern paper. I'm just going to skip the white stripes and do the colored ones. So I didn't want the orange to be close to the beak or the feet, so I just picked a spot and then went out from there. So the top stripe is going to be RV10, RV11, and RV13. The next stripe down is going to be RV13, RV14, and RV17. And for all of these, I'm going to put my darkest colors on the outside edges and blend toward the center so I get a highlight there that is going to make his belly look nice and round. I'm going to do the band on his witch's hat with that bright pink. I thought that would be something fun and unexpected. I'm going to color that in the exact same way from the outside in, with the exception of adding a tiny little shadow inside that buckle area. And then the next stripe down beneath the orange is going to be YG21, YG23, and YG25. And while I have those markers out, I'm also going to color the leaves on the branch. So I'm going to keep my darkest closest to the stem and then blend out and get lighter as I go down the leaves toward the tip. So use the YG25 first and then blend it out with the YG23 and filled in the white space with the YG21. The next stripe down is B quadruple 0, B00, and B02. So up until this point, we have almost like a neon rainbow going on, but we're going to make that a little bit darker and a little bit creepier by adding in some gray. I'm using C0, C1, and C3 for that. And then for the black stripe, I'm using C3, C5, and C7. I'm also going to use this combo for the witch's hat. So I'm going to add a shadow right up under that hat band, so there'd be a little bit of a shadow cast there, and then I'm going to really accentuate the part where it's kind of bent at the top, and then add another little shadow right above that hat band with that C7, and then I will start to blend that out with the C5, just pulling that dark color into the white space, softening the edge of that C7. And then I'm going to fill in the rest with the C3. And especially on the top part, I'm going to do little almost circular motions to kind of break up that pigment and then just pull it across. For the moon, I'm using Y000, Y11, and Y13, adding the shadow right in the crescent and then blending toward the outside edge with the Y11 and then filling in with the Y000. And I'm also going to use that Y13 to color in the buckle on the hat band. Then I'll take a black gel pen and go over their eyes so that they are nice and bright and shiny, and I'll trim these images out with their matching dyes. For my background, I'm using the new Rolling Clouds stencil to blend some Distress Oxide onto a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock. The top color that I'm using is Black Soot, and I'm going to build up that color there till it's nice and rich. And then I'm going to turn my stencil, and I'm going to remove most of the ink from that ink blending tool, and using soft pressure, I'm going to add another cloud layer. Then I'm going to switch to Hickory Smoke, and first I'm just going to use whatever ink is left over on that dauber to kind of integrate that into the cloud that I've already done. Then I will clean up my stencil with a baby wipe so I can flip it over to the other side so I can get another cloud formation and blend on some of that Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to do one more. I'm just picking another cloud formation, and then I'm going to get even softer on this layer. I'm kind of getting from darkest to lightest as I go down that panel. And then once I'm happy with that, I'll add just a bit more color down at the bottom so it's not quite so stark white. Then to add a bit more interest to my panel, I'm going to press some of that Black Soot onto my work surface, water that down, and pick it up with a small paintbrush, and then tap that against my finger so I get some nice small droplets. Then I'll set this panel aside to dry and work on my sentiment. I am blending a powder tool onto a piece of black licorice cardstock, and then I'm going to stamp my sentiment with Versamark ink. It's just a clear sticky embossing ink. And I'm using the sentiment that says "Eek, spooky times ahead." I did stamp that down twice to get a good impression, but I just pressed down very lightly, and then I'll coat that with some white embossing powder, tap the back of the cardstock to get off any excess, and heat that with my heat tool until it's nice and melted and bright white. I've created an A2 standard size top folding card out of some Grapesicle cardstock, and I've opened that up so that I can stamp on the inside, and I'm using the little mummy owl and the sentiment that says, "Who's up for a fun Halloween?" I wanted to use a card sketch for today's layout, so I just opened my board on Pinterest where I like to save different card sketches, and I'm searching through until I found this one from MFT. I'm not going to go exactly the same, but I'm definitely going to use this as an inspiration. So I'm going to go through that pattern paper pad once again, the new Creepy Confections pattern paper, and I'm going to choose 4 different prints to mix and match on my card. So I've got that pretty stripe that I used as my inspiration on the text, and then the orange crisscross, and I'm searching for one more. And I decided that this black pinstripe diagonal print was going to really make a nice frame for my focal panel. So I'm going to use that one, and I'm going to cut all of these patterns down so you can see how well these go together. This whole pad is actually full of fun prints that are great for layering on a card. But before I start layering, I first want to assemble my focal panel. So I've trimmed that down with one of the A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2, and I am adhering my branch about maybe 1/3 of the way up the panel, and then I'm going to add my little witchy owl sitting on that. And then I've got my two little clouds that I'm going to add in the top right corner with the crescent moon tucked between them. And then finally I've got my little spooky ghost owl, and he's going to go kind of flying in the center at the top there. I'm also going to add my sentiment that I have die cut down into a strip, and I'm going to adhere that down at the bottom of that focal panel. And now you can see the patterns that I have trimmed down using one of the large A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2, and then also one of the Stitched Scallop Basic Edges number 2. That one is on that orange crisscross pattern. So I'm adhering that pretty stripe down to cover the entire card. It's just going to leave a tiny little border area of that beautiful Grapesicle cardstock showing through on the edges. And then the text print I'm going to adhere down at the very bottom, and I'm going to layer the scallop right over top of that. And then I will take this black pinstripe and adhere that behind my focal panel. So I'm just using some more liquid glue to do that. And then I'll make sure that it's lined up nice and straight. And that one I just trimmed down with my paper trimmer because I wanted a really close cut, so there was just a little bit of a frame. And then I've popped that up on some foam tape to give it some dimension, and I'm going to line that up in the center of my card, and when I have it nice and straight, I can press that down into place. As a final embellishment, I'm going to add a little stardust stickles to just a few places on the card. I put some on the crescent moon and on the ghost owl's costume, on the buckle of the witchy owl's hat, and then a little bit on her costume as well. And I will lift that up to the light so you can see how it sparkles and give you another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete my card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the August edition of Christy Gets Crafty with My Favorite Things. If you did, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. I love chatting with you guys down there. And don't forget to subscribe to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.